Today, Prime Minister's Question Time, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, don't know if you've seen the footage. If you haven't, go online. Unedifying scene. She was in tears. Big bags under her eyes, sobs. She's looked really, really under the weather. And he, of course, in all his glory, refused to confirm that she'd be in a job. There's definitely at the root of this government real problems. We say, and we always do this on a Wednesday, it's my favourite part. Delightful. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer, Spike. Brendan, good evening. How are you?
Hey, Jeremy, I'm good, thank you.
Have you ever seen anything like this afternoon and last night in the Commons, genuinely, in your political writing career?
I don't think I have. What a shambles. You know, people are saying, well, government sources are saying that Rachel Reeves was crying over a personal matter. Look, that might be true.
No, apparently she had an absolute bollocking there, I'm using the word, from Lindsay Hoyle just before she went in the chamber. But the point is, and I think we've been very calm and very nice because nobody wants to have a go at somebody if there are personal issues. A1, if there was an illness or somebody in the family, then you would be excused, right?
Yeah.
For me, the really important thing, as Harry Cole said 2 hours ago, was the markets are looking at the fiscal head of this country, the bond dealers, the pound's already running down against the dollar, and they're going, what, that person is in charge? That's not a good look. Sorry, but that's business, right?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think those scenes of her sobbing and looking so shattered and so distressed, that is now the image of this government. Yeah. It's a shambles, emotionally, politically, morally, in every way you can imagine. And her face, I'm afraid to say, summed it up. This is a government that is emotionally incontinent, politically incapable, and morally bereft. And that is what I saw when I saw her in the Commons today, weeping like that, and all of them looking around, not knowing what they're doing. It's a shambles.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? We talk about, you know, the vibe of politics. 180 seat plus majority, 2 days out of a year's anniversary. And whatever your political persuasion, I'm British. I wanted this government to succeed. I felt that the shambles of the Tories, the failed responses, I didn't vote for Labour, but good luck to them. Awful. And 2 days out of a year out, I mean, a minister today says there will be financial consequences because of the last-minute concessions on the welfare bill. And we all know what that means. When the Tories left power, thank God, after 14 years, we had the highest taxation in 70 years. It will only rise. It will be everybody like us that pays the bills. And people are at the end of their tether. That's not an exaggeration.
You know, the discussion over this welfare bill has been disgusting. It has been so dishonest, especially from the so-called Labour rebels, those losers on the back benches who forced climb down after climb down, and then the losers on the front benches who went along with it because they want to save their own skins and stay in Downing Street. No one's being honest about the welfare problem in this country, which is that we have created this vast sclerotic institution that is giving money to people who don't need it, that is incentivizing people to claim that they are ill and incapacitated when in fact they could very well work if they wanted to. It's a system that rewards laziness and myth-making and this idea that I'm too ill to work, I'm mentally unstable, rather than a system that incentivizes work, incentivizes people to get off their behinds and get out there.
This is what I mean. And the myth-making, I just want to take from what you've just said. I will say this until the cows come home. I am more than happy to pay my taxes for people who cannot work, disabled people have had a really hard time. In fact, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, that makes me proud to be able to do that. I'm quite proud to be in a country where we help those who can't help themselves. But they are missing the point, this government, and politicians in their entirety, if they cannot see that the majority of the British people have suddenly woken up to the realisation that we're not paying for those people, because predominantly those people seem to be missing out, and people who are in need. We are giving money to a generation who feels they're entitled, who've decided that somehow being on the dole is a career choice. Where that came from, I've no idea. We're spending, we know how much on immigration, and I bring it every day, Brendan, right back to the same thing. Is if you're saying to people, thanks for all your effort, thanks for your tax, thanks for everything, everybody else is doing fine, you can sod off. It just doesn't work in the end. And whenever we get into a debate on shows like this about the NHS or welfare, everybody, you're right. This is, oh my God, they want to attack all the disabled people. Can I just say categorically, that's why this is so unpopular, stupid idiots in the Labour Party. The disabled people are the very first people you should be defending. That's the point, isn't it? Round the wrong way again. Completely ludicrous.
That is exactly the point. You know, disabled people in this country are not living it up. I mean, genuine disabled people, they're making ends meet just about by getting this benefit that they deserve because they are genuinely incapable, for whatever reason, of going to work in the same way that able-bodied people can. And the vast majority of people are like you. They are perfectly happy and proud to be able to help those people. But when you expand the system beyond all belief and beyond all reasonable expectation, when you give that money to more and more people, you harm the genuinely disabled. You are taking resources from them and giving them to people who could very easily work. You know, there's been a 69% rise in 25 to 34-year-olds claiming incapacity benefit. There's not been a world war in this country. There's absolutely no reason that young people of that age should feel incapacitated or incapable of working. They've been incentivized to feel like that by the mollycoddling culture they've been brought up in and by a welfare system that gives you more money if you pretend you're disabled rather than if you're unemployed and looking for a job. It's a scam and it's hurting disabled people and working Brits.
Couldn't agree more, mate. 0344 499 1000. Any questions on text to Brennan in the next 10 minutes? 87222. We talk migration every day. I don't know if you saw the great front page in The Sun today. If we can put it up again, Brendan. Buggy useless. This is French kit paid for by the UK. There's a picture of some French cops paraded around in a buggy paid for the UK yesterday. As in the background, you can see migrants setting sail for this country. I mean, that's farcical, man. This is happening on a daily basis. Can you explain to me why we give the French 500 million quid?
I'm afraid I can't. It's a complete mystery. And, you know, it's funny. That's a brilliant front page. It's a funny front page, but it's infuriating as well. And the anger that is out there amongst ordinary people is growing and growing. And I keep thinking, today has really made me think, when I saw Rachel Reeves and that babbling crowd in the Commons, I just thought, what's happened to our political class? You know, do you remember Thatcher? Now, you can be pro-Thatcher or anti-Thatcher, I don't really care. But she said, the lady is not for turning. She didn't put up with nonsense. She knew what she believed in. If she had made a deal with the French to carry out certain actions at the border, that would have happened. She would have put pressure on them. It would have caused a controversy if it hadn't happened. But we now have a political class that doesn't know what it's doing, doesn't care about protecting these borders, doesn't want to put pressure on the French to do what they should be doing with all our money.
How do they imagine they're going to... But how did... explain to me, you know more than me, how do politicians like that then, with that mindset, who don't want to rock the boat, who maybe have aspirations to stay there or have... What's their legacy? Why would you not have the mindset that, you know what, I stand in front of the British electorate, I give them what I believe should happen. If they vote for me, I am, through hell or high water, legal challenges, newspaper, Main Street, whatever, I'm going to do it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, I'll walk away. But come with me on the journey. I don't see that anymore. I saw that with Thatcher, you're right. I saw that with Blair, and there was a lot of disagreement. But Blair laid out a blueprint. This man... This is how bad the Tories were. This man never told us anything. And any of us with a brain cell were thinking, I know exactly what's going to happen. They'll give their union mates a pay rise. I promise you this. And they'll start spending money that we haven't got. And they will bankrupt the country, because every time there's been a socialist government in my lifetime, that's exactly what happens.
You know, it's like, I keep thinking, what is this government for? What does it believe in? What does it want to do? And as you say, what will its legacy be?
They say working people. I don't know any working class person. I said it earlier in the show, up north, where I go loads to Newcastle all the time. They don't know. They're all reform voters. They don't care about us. They care about London. They're all London-centric. That's what they think.
You know, I would rather have a government that I disagreed with on every issue, but at least knew what it was for, knew what it was doing, knew what impact it wanted to have on the country. And then we could argue about it and say, do this, don't do that. But this government is like, it's like political blancmange. You don't know what it is. It just falls apart all the time.
I don't think it knows what it is, which is. Let me take you one other thing I want to talk to you about, because we haven't spoken about it. You were here last Wednesday. the Glastonbury thing, I don't know if you were listening to the show. I wasn't in the best of moods by the time I found that news out, because I'd been at my son's speech day and they employed a BBC Radio 4 presenter called Andy Saltzman to do the speech, whereupon he literally, to 1,011 to 18-year-olds and their parents, was funny for 3 minutes and then proceeded to talk about how, you know, Donald Trump should be impeached and that your grandparents and parents in this audience who voted to leave the European Union have destroyed your future, and net zero. I mean, honestly, and I'm sitting there thinking, that's interesting, a lefty taking a fee from a fee-paying school. But anyway, so I get in the car and I'm not happy, and MG and I are speaking, and then we hear about Glastonbury. Yeah. I don't understand, and somebody was trying to explain to me today, how, again, Starmer believes the British people are going to buy the fact that a mother of one from Coventry can write some horrible words, but not be given a punishment that says, unfortunate, wrong, not condoned, this is why, let's spend some time in the community. But some upper-class twit from Hull with a double-barrelled name who pretends to be the heartbeat of a young culture can stand on stage and call for the death of Jews, and it takes pressure for 48 hours from people like us before the police announce an investigation, whether that's, you know, going to be a whitewash or not. Donald Trump got out of bed and banned him from America before Keir Starmer even opened his cake hole, for God's sake.
It's what happened at Glastonbury was truly disgusting. And all those people saying it wasn't a call for the death of Jews, it was just a call to dismantle an army. That is complete nonsense. That is a lie. And I think they know it's a lie. Because when you're saying death to the IDF, you're saying death to Jewish soldiers.
And do you know that the IDF is made up of 500,000 conscripts? So it absolutely is about death to the Jews. You're dead right.
Absolutely. And also, if you did have death to the IDF, which is what these ponces in that audience wanted, you would have the destruction of the Jewish state. The IDF is the only force protecting the Jewish homeland from the armies of anti-Semites that surround it. So they were openly calling in that field, Bob Villan and those idiots in the field were openly calling for the erasure of the Jewish nation and thus the erasure of the Jewish people in the Middle East. It was a genocidal cry, in my view, and it was shameful that the BBC could have easily pressed that button.
You know, Tim Davie was there. Did you find that out? Did you hear that? He was there and they took it to him. He was apparently meeting the staff, another freebie. 900 of them go. We're paying for it, in essence. And he's there and they say, and he went, well, I don't think we should have it on demand, but it can stay on streaming for 5 hours. Lucy Connolly took her tweet down. I'm not condoning what she said. I really want to make this point to people. She's languishing in jail. That piece of whatever's had been dropped by his agent and he's not allowed to go to America. When we talked after Southport, and I was supporting Starmer in going on the streets and showing a bit of strength, why wasn't this man taken off the stage in Glastonbury? I'll tell you why. Because the BBC knew exactly what was coming up, because there'll have been practices and run-throughs and they'll have seen. If you look, they said a tweet, you know, if you're coming, you know, it's quite this, that and the other. The BBC and Glastonbury are also and should be in the dock. You can't have it on one side and not on the other. It doesn't make sense.
You know, it's such a good point about Lucy Connolly and the two-tier system, because think about it like this. If someone on that stage had said what Lucy Connolly said, the BBC would have pressed the button. Yeah. They would have said, take it off air, quick, we've got a couple of minutes before it goes live. They would have done that without even thinking. So they saw this man chanting death to Jewish soldiers and they let it go to air into millions of homes and they didn't bat an eyelid because fundamentally they share those prejudices.
Do you think Tim Davie will have to go? Do you think the pressure will ramp up on the Director General of the BBC?
There's huge pressure on him now. I think he'll probably be defended by a lot of the idiots in the so-called liberal media who will say this is about free speech, where they never talk about free speech on any other issues. But you're right to raise the fundamental question, which is that there is a woman in this country who's going to be in jail for 31 months for writing something horrible that was up online for a couple of hours. And there's a man in this country running around free, even though he openly called for the death of people. That is an indictment against this government and the system we live under. Do
you like me just crave the day that we have a 20-minute conversation and it's not death and despair and misery? But honestly, mate, I find myself sort of open-mouthed. However, just to finish today, this could be the most open-mouthed thing I've ever asked you. If the reality, and Matthew Torbett, former Labour advisor, the only lefty lad on this show, is coming up next, and it'll be really interesting to hear what he says, but if the reality is right and Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are busted flushes, somewhere down the line, Brendan O'Neill, we could face Angela Rayner as the next Prime Minister of the United... She's gone already. Wow. Our Ange. I mean, some comeback. What do you reckon?
You know, you think to yourself, it can't possibly get worse. And then you think, oh, yes, it can. Because unbelievably, there are people on that bench that are even worse than Starmer and Reeves. That's the incredible situation we find ourselves in. You said earlier on that there are people up and down the country biting at the bit to vote for reform. That is so true. I meet people like that all the time. They want something new. They want something different. They're sick of this government 1 year in. Starmer is in huge trouble. And if he doesn't realise that, he's more of an idiot than I thought.
Can you see Angela Rayner as the PM?
I can see it in a nightmarish dystopian way. You can just picture how awful it would be. It would be the stuff of novels that if someone like that was running the country. I think that would be the final straw. I think there'd be some kind of revolution at that point, because who can have Angela Rayner as Prime Minister? It'd be ridiculous.
Well, lovely to speak to you, my friend. Have a great week. Always good to have you on a Wednesday. Brendan O'Neill, Chief Political Writer for Spike. Thank